Greetings and welcome to AzerNews. My name is Akbar Novruz, and today we have a special guest joining us from United States, Dr. Frank Musmar, an expert on US politics and South Caucasus geopolitics situation. Hello and welcome, Mr. Musmar.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we are quite delighted to honor you today. And of course, we have lots of things going on currently on the South Caucasus. Of course, as COP29 reaches on the merge, of course, we have lots of perspectives, most certainly between the relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. There are, of course, predictions, and there are official statements by Azerbaijan government and Armenian government on the consensus of the peace agreement until COP29 or even in the COP29 event. But before we delve into our questions, I would like to ask our viewers to subscribe and put a comment, and keep that in mind that if you show activeness, we will, of course, post videos frequently. Now let's get to our questions. The first questions I would like to ask you, Mr. Musmar, is about Mr. James O'Brien's latest statement. So US Deputy Secretary of State James O'Brien recently stated that the security architecture created by Russia and Iran is undesirable for the countries of the South Caucasus, most certainly Azerbaijan government and Armenian government. And of course, we all know that the main question here, of course, is why is the US suddenly concerned about Russian and Iranian influence in the South Caucasus? Yet it has consistently turned a blind eye to Armenia's deepening ties with Russia and Iran. And of course, in the light of these recent events, President Hamayev, during his official visit to Russia, have conducted an interview with a Russian channel and, of course, lambasted US sanctions policy against Azerbaijan and had emphasized that the sanctions were imposed on Azerbaijan in 1992 under the false accusation for our country was blockading Armenia, even though Azerbaijan territories were under Armenian occupation. So I would like to ask your opinion about this, Mr. Musmar.
Well, okay. So you started about the comments of Mr. James O'Brien, right? And what he mentioned. Well, basically, in the past, the Caucasus area were within the atmosphere of Russia. So we know that fact. And the United States, with its previous relationship with Russia before the Ukrainian war, were trying just to play politics, and most likely those countries in the middle, they pay the cost, I would say that. So basically, the entire situation changed after the Russian-Ukrainian war and after the escalation in the Middle East. And we see like a constant escalation in the Middle East. Started with Hamas and then now Hezbollah and then most likely Iran. So the United States play its cards based on the situation, keeping some main interest or point of interest, which is, in my opinion, the main point of interest within the Caucasian area is Azerbaijan to the United States. We did not see any movement towards Armenia before Miss Nancy Pelosi just all of a sudden out of nowhere she visited Armenia, which is of course after what you mentioned, after the let's say the Artsakh and the situation of Nagorno-Karabakh. If we want to say in general, like what's the policies or what's the main interest of the United States or the Western world in general in the Caucasian area, it does not go outside the umbrella of democracy, human rights, energy, and security. So those are the main border lines that the Western world works within that by deciding their relationships and which country and how they play their factors here. There is, of course, there is no two persons can disagree that the position of Azerbaijan is much better than Armenia or Georgia within the area because, of course, of the gas and oil and because of the neutrality of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan has a unique structure that those other two countries doesn't have. So basically now we are getting close to the election in the United States. and both parties are playing now their cards. And of course, we're gonna see different factors very soon, but they're not gonna be like way too much of a new emergent factors. It's not gonna be outside the main factors that I told you, which is democracy, human rights, energy, and security.
As you mentioned about the presidential elections upcoming in US in November, I would like to ask one little question about that question about this situation. What changes or significant changes might occur in South Caucasus region after the US election? Because we have been quite familiar with Democrats being in a close relationship with Armenia, most certainly. But if we see any sort of, Republicans gaining power, do you see any sort of differences happening in South Caucasus in terms of the relations?
Well, the strength of Armenian diaspora is really well known in the United States, basically in California, the state of California, and
Mhm,
recently they start expanding a little bit within what's called swing states. The Armenian diaspora is represented by the Armenian Assembly of America and the Armenian National Committee of America, which is actually both of them, they are political organizations and they've been there for a long time. They do have an influence, yes, they do. They directed their interest all the time towards Democrats. So it's
mhm,
nothing new that if they are now working with Kamala Harris, because she is representing the Democrats now. But basically, of course, the biggest problem for Azerbaijan, in my point of view, that they don't have that equal volume or weight of diaspora, just like Armenia. And actually, it's not just in the United States; it's in France as well. So Armenia's diaspora is well established in France, and of course, they use their way to influence politics. So they have like three major demands when they are trying to work with the, let's say, democratic parties. And once they approach, let's say, Miss Kamala, what they want, like they want, let's say, an apology from the United States that the United States doesn't have any complicity with
mhm,
what happens in Artsakh, as an example, or to gain at least a condemnation against the Azerbaijani government against what's called genocide of Artsakh. That's what they're claiming. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Of course, based on that, they will cast their votes. Now, for California, the Republicans in general, they don't give too much interest in California because it's well known as a blue state. It's well known that it is a democratic state. Now, could they change the map of the swing states? Because I told you, they start expanding in what's called those 6, 7 swing states, like somewhere in the middle. They could have some influence, but not too big of an influence.
mhm.
So basically, yes, they will cast their voice towards the party that is going to give them more promises, which is I'm expecting is going to be the Democratic Party. Why? Because basically the Republicans Party, and most likely, let's say I'm expecting they will win, represented by Trump. They follow the non-interference policy. They don't like to interfere in internal affairs of any country. Not talking about the Caucasians.
They seek to more isolate themselves from these political situations.
They don't isolate themselves, but they don't like to be too much involved in
Okay,
internal affairs. They
shortcomings.
would like to leave the countries running the way they want, but they keep the major umbrella of relationship, which is not going to be violating of the main broader lines that I told you, which is democracy, humor. That's why you will find maybe more criticism against Azerbaijan of what's called human rights, as an example, democracy, but it's not going to be against like their entire policy against the United States. Basically, something else that is now start emerging, which is the developments in the Middle East towards Iran. So that will create a different position of Azerbaijan here, could be like the major alliance in the north of Iran. So that will be a key factor for both parties, not talking about only Trump and the Republican Party.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Mr. Musmar. For the last question, I would like to move into, of course, a peace agreement consensus between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Recently, Parliament Speaker of the Armenian government, Alen Simonyan, have stated that Armenian government is ready to sign a peace agreement until COP29 or even in COP29, which has been, of course, stated by Azerbaijan government many months ago. And even after that, we have seen a president of the Armenian state, Vagan Kachaturian, stating and officially saying that we are quite ready to sign a peace agreement for the next 4 weeks, even before, let's say, COP29. So, but though there are certain things happening in Armenia, and most certainly the rising revanchist sentiments in Armenia, do you actually think that can the rising revanchist sentiments in Armenia affect Pashinyan government's ability to negotiate and implement a peace treaty? And do you think that is the internal pressure in Armenia likely to derail or shape the content of proposed agreement? Because we see lots of, media, lots of people on social media, most certainly, saying boycotting COP29, which most certainly is a negative effect on the peace agreement. How do you assess that? Do you think that peace agreement can be signed in COP29 or until COP29?
I believe it will be signed. Now, for like, let's say, internal opinion in any country, you cannot stop that. And of course, there is activists in any country,
Mhm,
that you'll find them, accepting or denying any future negotiations or agreements for their country or within the regions. But Armenians in general, they know their limitations. With all due respect, but Armenia is very limited country in the resources.
mhm,
Armenia is way reliant on Russia on their gas and resources. And actually, I think Pashinyan is a clever person. He knows how to play within the atmosphere of the area. So it's much better for them to get more, let's say, resources or more future relationship related to gas and oil to their country than Russia. Much better. If I'm in his position, I will go that direction. In the meantime, they knows that the development in the Middle East is going to be very, very important factor. Most likely, Israel and America is going full force against Iran. Now, it might be months, might be more than that, but it's going that direction. If you look now, the developments, it start to be beside escalation to the point of like now um, changing the map. When we say, and as an example, there is a conflict between Israel and Hamas, that been not consider a new news. It's something been happening for the last maybe 14, 15 years. But when Israel is going against the leadership of Hamas, that's changing the map. Going against the leadership of Hezbollah, that's changing the map. And now going full force against Iran, which is I'm expecting that very soon or after the election results of the United States, that will create the most optimal position for Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is well known for a good relationship with the United States and Israel. It's a good position in the north of Iran and will be a very important key factor. Within that, Iranian understand that factor and they know they have no much cards to play with. So it's better for them to stay focused and sign the peace agreements. And I think Pashinyan is a clever person. He will do that. Beside the point that you said, there is a rise sentiment from inside, or
yes.
people expressing that they are with or against. That's normal in any country. You will find people supporting or denying an agreement, but I don't think it's going to affect the entire situation to deny the actual agreement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Musbar. That's it for today. Thank you. We are quite delighted to honor you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And that's it for today, dear AzerNews viewers. Today, it was me, Akbar Novruz, and for our guest, it was Dr. Frank Musmar, US expert in South Caucasus. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. See you next time.